You are on the channel Quotes of Great Men. Enjoy watching. The sure path can only lead to death. The fact is that certain ideas exist almost everywhere and at all times, and can even spontaneously create themselves quite independently of migration and tradition. Only in our creative acts do we step forth into the light and see ourselves whole and complete. A scream is always just that, a noise and not music. In knowing ourselves to be unique, we possess the capacity for becoming conscious of the infinite. But only then. One is forced to speak not of what is held in common between the cultures, but what is held in common between the myths, and that in its simplest archetypal forms. I think that one should view with philosophic admiration the strange paths of the libido and should investigate the purposes of its circuitous ways. The creative person is overpowered, captive of and driven by a demon. They become our legendary heroes. Once upon a time men were possessed by devils. Now they are not less obsessed by ideas. Every civilized human being, whatever his conscious development, is still an archaic man at the deeper levels of his psyche. Every victory contains the germ of future defeat. The upheaval of our world and the upheaval of our consciousness are one and the same. A residual sea of symbols which is shared by all mankind, usually accessed through dreams or altered states, and from which cultures draw images on which to found their religions. Shrinking away from death is something unhealthy and abnormal which robs the second half of life of its purpose. The inner man has access to the sense organs of God. It is indeed time for the clergyman and the psychotherapist to join forces. Whoever is afraid must needs be dependent. A weak thing needs support. That is why the primitive mind, from deep psychological necessity, begot religious instruction and embodied it in a magician or a priest. Language, in its origin and essence, is simply a system of signs or symbols that denote real occurrences or their echo in the human soul. You can take away a man's gods, but only to give him others in return. One could say, with a little exaggeration, that the persona is that which in reality one is not, but which oneself as well as others think one is. Synchronistic events provide an immediate religious experience as a direct encounter with the compensatory patterning of events in nature as a whole, both inwardly and outwardly. From the viewpoint of analytic psychology, the theater, aside from any aesthetic value, may be considered as an institution for the treatment of the mass complex. A collection of 100 great brains makes one big fat head. Special knowledge is a terrible disadvantage. Becoming conscious is of course a sacrilege against nature. It is as though you had robbed the unconscious of something. I am astonished, disappointed, pleased with myself. I am distressed, depressed, rapturous. I am all these things at once and cannot add up the sum. Man is the mirror God holds up to himself, the sense organ with which he apprehends his being. I believe that history is capable of anything. There exists no folly that men have not tried out. Recognition of the reality of evil necessarily relativizes the good, and the evil likewise, converting both into halves of a paradoxical whole. We can keep from a child all knowledge of earlier myths, but we cannot take from him the need for mythology. The world hangs on a thin thread, and that is the psyche of man. If you should see people in a room, you would not think that you had made those people, or that you were responsible for them. Those who look outside, dream. Those who look inside, awaken. Psychological type is nothing static, it changes in the course of life. A particularly beautiful woman is a source of terror. As a rule, a beautiful woman is a terrible disappointment. Nothing is more repulsive than a furtively prurient spirituality. It is just as unsavory as gross sensuality. In such doubtful matters, where you have to work as a pioneer, you must be able to put some trust in your intuition and follow your feeling even at the risk of going wrong. We cannot imagine events that are connected non-causally and are capable of a non-causal explanation. But that does not mean that such events do not exist. To become conscious of it involves recognizing the dark aspects of the personality as present and real. Astrology is assured of recognition from psychology without further restrictions, because astrology represents the summation of all the psychological knowledge of antiquity. In my case, Pilgrim's Progress consisted in my having to climb down 1,000 ladders until I could reach out my hand to the little clod of earth that I am. No nation keeps its word. A nation is a big, blind worm, following what? Fate, perhaps. A nation has no honor, it has no word to keep. If you watch to the end, I am very grateful to you. Watch also these videos,